All right. Hi, all, and welcome to Elevating IT Compliance Audits, Best Practices for Completeness and Accuracy. Two great words there, right? Completeness and accuracy. Now, today's exciting webinar is sponsored by Zilla Security and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name's Jess Steinbach. I'm with Actual Tech Media, and I am so happy that I get to be your moderator for this conversation today because we have not one, but two awesome experts here with us to dig into the complexities of IT compliance audits. And there is a lot to consider these days, right? Modern IT environments are layered. They are evolving faster than ever. And depending how you look at it, whether you're feeling optimistic, they are more challenging and also more exciting than ever. Now, today we have two top experts here with us to help us understand the absolute most essential practices that you should have in your strategic approach to ensure, again, that accuracy and that completeness, those very important words when you're considering your organization's IT compliance audits. This is going to be a very cool conversation. I cannot wait to get started. So we are going to zip through a few of the housekeeping things and then we'll get us on our way. All right, let's start with that usual guided tour of your audience console. I'm going to do this like a flight attendant sometimes. If you look at the left-hand side of your screen, if you check out your screen, you're going to see a window there that has a handouts tab and a questions tab. Let's start with the questions tabs. Open that up together right now. Now that questions tab is the absolute best place to get involved, to get interactive. We really want to hear from you folks today. Now, our speakers are going to we're going to start out with a little bit more of a conversation back and forth. So think of us as sitting down at the dinner table and listening to these two incredible experts really dig into what excites them, what we need to know. And then the table gets to open up and we all get to jump in on the conversation. We get to be a part of that chat. So today is a great day to get that tab open. Make sure you get the comments in, the feedback, the ideas, and all of your burning questions. We absolutely want to hear from you. You can give a little test run right now. I see some highs and hellos coming in already. Let's get a few more of those going. Say hello to the community out there with us today. Give that questions tab a little bit of a test run this morning. Now, I do also want to point out that questions window is the best place to get in touch with the Actual Tech Media team. So if you are having any little issues today, big or small, I guess, whatever technical issue might come up, this is how you're going to reach out to the Actual Tech Media team. But before you do that, give a browser refresh a try. I promise you that a browser refresh knocks out most of the usual tech gremlins. If it doesn't, we are, of course, there to help. The last thing I want to point out on our guided tour is the handouts tab. Make sure you click on that handouts tab, click and scroll down, start exploring those resources. It is absolutely packed with some cool takeaways for you today, including some demos. We're going to talk more about these later, but make sure you've got those tabs opened, hold on to them, save those for after we wrap up the webinar, because I promise you're going to want to come back to those. And my friends, it is not just cool content we are giving away today. We have a $250 Amazon gift card as a prize drawing that we will be giving away at the end of our webinar. Now, as always, you do need to be here in live attendance in order to qualify to win that prize. And all winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. And if you're saying to yourself right now, Jess, I don't know what the prize terms and conditions are, no problem. We have them written down for you right back in that handouts tab. Click and scroll down. You'll find the full T's and C's waiting for you there. All right, well, speaking of cool prizes, there is one other way that you can win a prize today. Now, I mentioned that we want this to be fun and interactive. We're going to open up our conversation once we get through our presentation, and we're going to get the chance to dig into some of these topics with our incredible expert speakers. So now is the time to make sure you're getting warmed up and getting those questions in. And not only will that bring up the whole fun and flow of our conversation today, it will also enter you to win a prize. We have a $50 Amazon gift card going to the best question asked. We are going to review all the questions asked after we wrap up. So even if we don't get to you in our live conversation, you are still entered to win. So get those questions rolling in, my friends. All right, well, that brings us to the start of our webinar. I don't know about all of you, but I am pumped up and ready to jump in. I'm so excited to introduce you all to our expert speakers here with us today. That's Aaron Beaudoin, Director of Product Management at Zilla Security, and their special guest, Hubert Hopkins, IT Compliance Analyst at Baldwin Risk Partners. Aaron and Hubert, I am so looking forward to sitting in on this conversation between the two of you. I know that you have a lot of information to cover. And as I said, we want to save some time to get into audience questions a little bit later on. So I'm going to step back and hand the platform on over to you. I'll get you guys on out here with me. Take it away, Aaron.
Hello. I'd like to welcome our audience to our conversation around completeness and accuracy, best practices for IT compliance programs with an industry veteran in the space, Hubert Hopkins from Baldwin Risk Partners. I'm Aaron Beaudoin, Director of Product Management here at Zilla Security. We make identity security compliance easy and enable organizations to establish security and compliance best practices to eliminate access risk in a single SaaS platform. I've been in the identity directory and security space for 30 years. Most recently at Avexa, who was a pioneer of access compliance and governance automation and was acquired by RSA Security. I'd like to introduce Hubert Hopkins from Baldwin Risk Partners. Hubert?
Good morning, Aaron. Pleasure being here. Hubert Hopkins, Baldwin Risk Partners. Current role, IT Compliance Analyst for them. I've been with the organization going on 2 years now. Prior to that, I have 15 years of IT audit experience, including senior internal audit positions at some publicly traded companies, First Energy, Signet Corp, and Diebold. Along with that, I held senior positions in some of the global accounting firms such as E&Y, Crowe Horwath, and RSM. And prior to my IT audit experience, I have over 10 years of IT consulting and network administration experience. So understand both sides of the fence. So that's helped me out in my career. I hold an MBA from the University of Phoenix in technology management and an accounting degree from Clarion University of Pennsylvania. I'm also a certified information systems auditor, CISA, and I've been a part of ISACA for 16 years now, which is the governing body for those certifications. And I'm currently the president of the local West Florida chapter here for that organization.
Excellent. Welcome, Hubert. This is going to be a great informative conversation, and I know you have a lot of expertise, information, and guidance to share with the folks today. Let's start by looking at some of your historical experience and learnings, especially those which have made achieving completeness and accuracy challenging in the access compliance area. Can you share your thoughts and insights around what has changed in IT, ownership, and responsibility that folks should be aware of?
Sure. I think, traditionally, again, we've been asked to provide, say, a user list, right? Or a list of users or some information about an application that's going to be used in an audit. And most individuals like, well, hey, here, I know the application. I'm just going to go in real quick. I'm going to run this report or export some information for you. And they're not thinking in the context of the audit where, okay, how do we know how we captured that report? Is it a canned report from the system, or is it a customized report? Did we use a query? Did we get a date and time stamp? Can we prove that the export had X amount of records and now I've exported it to a, say, CSV or Excel file, and that export now, matches what's in the system? So I think that's the keys that individuals don't think about when it comes to the context of the audit. Yes, I can run a report, but is it good enough to stand up to the audit questions?
Great, thank you. I'm sure all those manual extracts, reports, CSVs, screenshots, et cetera, cause some of the challenges of their own in the overall process. How have you seen the role of automation improve in achieving completeness and accuracy as you conduct these audits? Any advice there?
Yes, so automation can address some of those repetitive tasks that may be error prone by humans, right? We forget to capture a right screen print. We forget to do XYZ. It's a mundane task that happens to happen. So now if we have a automation tool that connects directly to the application, that's going to reduce those potential inaccuracies, and those can also be run potentially in off hours, right? Allowing the staff to focus on their core tasks now instead of, well, okay, every month I have to run, this report or that report, and I have to take those many steps. It also leaves that organization process, to continue without, having all that training. Right now, if somebody leaves an organization, right, I don't have to train somebody new to do that same task and do it accurately because of audit requirements.
Hubert, continuing on the automation topic and being aware of these challenges, what is your perspective on tool selection to help with the automation? What's important to you?
Thanks, Aaron, for the question. So tool evolution, I feel, has changed over time from the tool being expected just to automate the function of collecting data from an application or a system out there. That was the primary purpose, right? Can I automate that function so that I don't have to go to application owners, periodically, or IT periodically and say, hey, can you run that report again for me? To now the automation should be, can I collect the data from a application or system and then perform the automation of a function that I pulled that data for, such as an access review, where I can now automate sending out the review. I can automate email reminders for that review. Even now, can I execute potentially removal of access when it's been requested as part of a review? So that would be the evolution of the tools that I see out there, where it came from the simple automation of a task just to pull data to now performing the whole function that we needed that data for in the first place.
It sounds like automation today needs to be advanced in streamlining those repetitive tasks and improving accuracy from a trustworthy standpoint, whereas past tools and processes heavily relied on manual data collection, limited permission visibility, custom extractions from the application, all leading to questionable completeness and accuracy. But now, helping provide that evidence to the auditor, you expect the tools and solutions to be more sophisticated, less reliant on the expertise of the application owner, and actually be able to gather the majority of the relevant information automatically. I'm sure there are a number of best recommended practices that you've developed to ensure that the correct data is brought into the solution that you're using, right, for audit completeness and accuracy. Can you share some of those with our viewers?
Correct, right? So again, as we mentioned, you have to trust that application. You have to get that buy-in. How do we know what it's doing? Can we manipulate that data afterwards, right? So the reliability of that tool needs to be that, hey, is it modifying anything? Can we, it's hard for applications, right? Those tools to say, hey, show me the code, right? Because some of it may be proprietary, but to get comfort over it, some of those tools, right, they should have like an audit tracking log, right, that tracks anything it does, whether it's pulling data in, whether it's doing whatever it's going to do with that data, but that data shouldn't be then modified either, right? So the tool should say, hey, I've pulled data in, nobody can modify that data. If we use the example again of a user listing, right? Okay, that user's name in the source system, their permission, their email, whatever it is that comes in, it should not be editable by this tool, because then that's going to make it harder for the auditors to trust and rely on that tool if the data can be manipulated.
Makes sense. In terms of completeness and accuracy, as you look at the solution you have in place there and the benefits you're seeing, how do you ensure that that you didn't miss anything important, right? There are no blind spots. The applications you need are included, whether they're cloud, SaaS applications, on-prem apps, are all covered in the process.
So I think it depends on the complexity of the organization, the importance of what you're going to pull into a tool, right? A lot of it, obviously, these days is driven by a regulation or requirement. A big one out there, obviously, SOX, right? But we have HIPAA, we have some GDPR, you may have some state privacy laws where we need to pull, depending on the scope of the application. So from an auditor's perspective, right, on one side, they only care about the applications that are in scope for whatever that audit requirement may be. Whereas if I am a practitioner in IT, similar to my current role as a compliance analyst, right? I care about IT as a whole, right? Anything I do and review should stand up to those audit requirements. So I think as an organization, when you look at using a tool, you have to first say, where are my high risk areas first, and then slowly go down that list as you decide, is there value in adding this application to my tool, right? Is it going to give me a benefit of whether it's internal audit requirement, whatever it is?
Okay, Hubert, since you started using the Zilla solution, I believe it's coming on a couple of years now, in looking at your current implementation, how do you think it's helped you achieve completeness and accuracy in your user access review process? Any specific examples?
So it's been a tremendous help, one, in some of the instances, right, to automate that import function. We have a few custom applications here at BRP that we have to manually import, but Zilla makes it easy to do that mapping and import those applications as well. But over time, we built that trust up with the auditors to do these access reviews. And again, being able to prove out the completeness and accuracy by just taking some quick screen prints back in the host application to what Zilla is telling us, gets their comfort. Zilla, again, has those audit logs that says everything that happened to that import, right? Hey, it completed successfully. No, it didn't complete successfully, right? We use a source of truth that you would want to map your data against for individuals. But I think overall that it's streamlined our processes a lot, right? In the past, historical things, we tend to export again some file from an application or whatever we can do. We put it in a Excel file and we email it out to a bunch of different individuals and hope we get the same information back. And this tool has definitely streamlined that process for us.
Excellent. That's great news. As a final question here, if you were to leave the audience with a few pieces of advice on suggestions around what they can do from a best recommended practices perspective to help improve their processes and pass audits successfully and smoothly, what would they be?
So there's several things that I think we learned in our implementation of Zilla and that I've seen over my career in doing audit is, one, get the auditors involved early, right? Whether it's your internal audit team, whether it's your external audit team, right? Let them know, hey, we're going to be using this new tool, right? That helps get that buy-in early on throughout the process before you just spring it on them that says, here, I did this review in this tool, and they're just supposed to trust it, right? There's always that skepticism, as they call it in IT audit still these days, right? Well, just because it's a proven application doesn't mean there's not defects in it. So that's a key area. Again, I think the challenges are figuring out with each application, is there a automation that I can put in that, and getting the buy-in from the business to trust you to connect to their application, right? To say, hey, we're going to import this information. Tell us how it looks to you so that we make sure the reviewers are doing the right thing. Educating those reviewers in this essence, talking about if we're doing an access review like we do in Zilla's tool, just giving them a quick education of how simple and easy the tool is, because there is, with change always, right? People hate change, and giving them something new, they're like, I don't know about this. This is going to be complicated. And really, Zilla isn't complicated, right? They've found out now, and I've heard praise from many of our reviewers. Well, I didn't realize it was going to be that simple to do this review process, right? So, and the last takeaway I would think is just figuring out your applications, somewhat, maybe it's a dream to get to for organizations depending on their level of maturity, but what do my applications and roles and permissions look like? Can I get to that, quote, role-based access, right? Because the more one-off permissions, I'll call it, your application has, the harder or bigger that review is going to look to a reviewer, right? Versus a simplistic role-based that makes it simple for them to understand and review access.
This is all great advice, Hubert. Hopefully people today find this conversation and advice useful as they look at adopting new IT compliance solutions and rolling them out in their environments. This has been a great conversation. We really appreciate your time today, Hubert. Looking forward to chatting in the next episode. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been fun.
Thank you again, Hubert. Wonderful conversation. Before we wrap up this session, I would like to review some of the recommended processes and guidelines around achieving access review, completeness, and accuracy.
The first is really around automation, right? And this is reducing the manual, mundane processes that can lead to inaccuracies by automating the process of bringing in the user information, including organizational hierarchies, applications, accounts, and permissions that are needed for these audits, both from a regulatory and IT compliance perspective. The second is ensuring that there's ownership and accountability. And this is making sure that the applications have business ownership assigned. That's those individuals who are responsible for overseeing the application, and they may be reviewing the application and the users that have access to their applications. And before running the review and launching to the end users, it's good practice to incorporate a campaign readiness stage. And this is a pre-review stage, right? It's before launching the review to the reviewers to make sure that the items are current, they're up to date, and things are ready to go. And this process includes making sure the applications and the corresponding accounts and permissions that will be included in the review have been synced lately and are up to date and current. It's also around making sure that the application business context is accurate and up to date. And this includes making sure the business descriptions for permissions are updated so the reviewers understand the context of the access that's being reviewed. It's also looking at the accounts in the applications to ensure that they're appropriately mapped to users. So you have the appropriate coverage and who actually has access to those particular permissions. And then at the same time, as part of the campaign readiness stage, you can upload any necessary audit evidence for applications. For example, this may include things around application screenshots, any sort of compliance and mitigation controls that might be in place for the application, or other items that your auditors require as part of the review cycle in audit. And finally, you want to preview the overall campaign and reviewer assignments and make sure things look right. The next step is really around launching and monitoring that campaign. Now, when you run the campaign, you're actually notifying the reviewers of their reviews to complete. And during this process, additional evidence for the applications is automatically included in the campaign and being tracked, including the latest application sync information, the number of changes and when that sync happened, a point-in-time snapshot of the accounts and permissions for each application as it was included in the campaign. Right? And this is really the before snapshot of an access in the application from an audit perspective. And then as reviewers are performing their reviews, all the actions such as maintaining access, revoking access, and comments are maintained in the campaign audit logs, while campaign monitors watch over the campaign progress to ensure things are being completed on time based on the schedules. And additionally, during the campaign process while it's running, additional audit evidence can be uploaded as needed during that process. Once the campaign is completed, the snapshot of the application and accounts and permissions is included in the campaign evidence as well. And this is really the after campaign view. So it's the other side of the before campaign snapshot and then after the campaign was completed snapshot. So you have the difference of, the accounts and permissions in the application. Additional audit evidence can also be included in the after the campaign has been completed. And this is based on any post-campaign audit evidence that may be required. In all the evidence that is automatically generated and manually uploaded is accessible as a evidence package download zip file. This evidence package includes things such as campaign summary reports, which include all of the number of campaign settings in the users and application scopes, the reviewer assignments of who's been assigned to review which permissions and which users, and the corresponding actions such as maintain or revoke and any associated comments, all in a single file. It'll include a evidence folder for each of the application evidence files, such as the before and after campaign access reports. And then it'll also include a report of the post-campaign status. And this post-campaign status is a summary of reviewed items, actions taken, including revocations that have been requested, which ones are completed that we track, and which ones are still pending. So you have that one view in all the different aspects of where the campaign started from and then where it actually completed at.
I would like to thank you all for attending this session. Hopefully you were able to take away some key points towards a complete and accurate IT compliance program. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, Aaron. What a wonderful presentation, and thank you for taking us through that conversation with Hubert. I told you I was going to do that. I live in Canada, where we want to pronounce everything with a French accent. Hubert had some great takeaways for us. I really appreciate that conversation. Now, Aaron, we have a lot of questions coming in from the audience, so we're going to jump into those. Are you ready?
Absolutely. Let's go ahead, Jess.
Let's do it. Okay. All right. I want to start out with this one here because I think this is a great place to kind of jump into the conversation. So we had a question coming in from our audience wondering, besides getting involved early in the process, what are some other best practices to keep in mind when working with external IT auditors? What do you think, Aaron, should also be on that best practice list?
Yeah, I absolutely agree that, that early involvement process is key. But it's more than just that. It's also having, regular meetings and checkpoints to make sure that no surprises along the way pop up, even if it's a simple check-in. And it's also understanding, if there are changes in the audit scope, so you can adjust and inform other responsible parties, preferably before the process kicks off, but they might be new to the process. So keeping them involved early would be good as well. And, like Hubert mentioned, it's good to give the advance notice, but it might also be good to provide examples and maybe a walkthrough of what the evidence the system is collecting, right? And what you'll be sending at the completion of the review. For example, the review evidence package, right? So you can understand if there are additional evidence artifacts that they may be looking for, and you can get ahead of the game versus being reactive.
Well, I think that's always an important part of the conversation is stepping back from that reactive and into the proactive, because that's where we get out of making that instinctive or in worst case, panic-based discussion decisions, right? And
Exactly.
Instead being able to kind of get out in front of it, which is a huge part of what we're kind of talking about today, which is really cool.
And less painful.
Yeah, way less painful. All right, so let's get into another one here. I like this one. When engaging with stakeholders on access review, are there specific tips to keep in mind when dealing with business users or application owners that drag their feet or miss deadlines? Oh, great question, Aaron. I'm guessing there's a lot of folks that can relate to that. What tips do you have?
Yeah, hopefully avoiding the scenario is paramount, right? And just like you bringing the auditors in early, bringing in the stakeholders early in the process of and often is what is expected and when it is expected, especially those new parties that are new to the process, right? And don't wait to send these reminders at the end. And your organization has an audit timeline to complete, right? They have to make this based on some internal controls. So, engage using the communication of preference, right? Some folks don't use email, but messaging platforms such as Slack and Teams. And remember, make this process extremely, I'll say, simple and streamlined. Helps reduce that friction, right? It helps reduce those people that aren't able to get to these pieces here, or drag their feet, or miss these deadlines. But remember, it's not their day job. So how can we help them achieve this through reducing those manual repetitive tasks when getting ready? And that's usually through automation, such as helping integrate directly with these applications and automate the collection of accounts and permissions, automate the assignment of the reviewers who should review what, and then automating a lot of the follow-up and processes to make sure that while things are getting done, they're getting done on time, and you have that instant visibility of who you need to reach out to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's such a good point, and I appreciate both you and Hubert have mentioned the sort of change management of it all, and I think that is so important. And a comment that you made just there really resonated in my head, that it's not their day job, and I think sometimes we forget that when we think about these things. That I had a conversation with someone the other day, and I said ransomware, and they said what, and I was like, what? What do you mean? What is ransomware? But for some of us, we talk about this kind of stuff all the time. For others, we don't. And so having an expectation of being able to jump in on a new tool that they might be feeling a little bit foot draggy about for one reason or another. And I really appreciate that at the heart of this whole conversation, both of you have kind of come back to that need to engage and not push this at somebody, but instead invite them to be part of it. And that ease of use is really important, which actually ties into another question that I think is an important one to kind of explore a little bit. And Ken was sort of asking about finding that balance between ease, making it easy, as well as keeping up the quality. And I'm wondering if you can talk to us a little bit about how you hit both of those things.
Yep. That's actually a very good question there as well, because you don't want to make it so hard and difficult for folks that they ignore the process completely or they rubber stamp things. At that point, then it's useless from an audit perspective or a review perspective. But you want to be able to provide that right level of information and understanding to the folks of the risk of these reviews, right, of these audits, with the right business context. And it is an interesting balance that you need to attain with, providing the right information to the right people with the right business context helps them understand, the risk of, helping conduct the review and perform the review. And making it too complex, leads to things like, I don't want to do this, or I'm just going to, make it so I'm just going to rubber stamp things, and you don't want to have that happen. So it does become an interesting balance, and making it simple for them to understand those elements leads to what I'll say is a probably more quality of the review process.
That's a good take. I like that a lot, that these things are not oppositional. They're not mutually exclusive, but instead rather the quality, or making it easy, is going to increase the quality. And so the one sort of equals the other instead of canceling the other, which is, I think we do often tend to see those as oppositional, right? If something's easy, it must not be accurate.
Exactly right.
Okay. Let's go to this one here. My company is considering solutions that can automate our user access reviews for SOC 2 compliance. From your standpoint, are there any specific features related to evidence gathering for auditors that we should keep in mind when evaluating tools?
Yeah, yes, that's a good question. As you're looking at different solutions out there, one of the first things from a paramount aspect is looking at how is evidence gathering as a default capability of the product or the solution, right? And how does that automated process conduct these evidence gathering things integral to the part of the solution, right? It's not a bolt-on, it's not an add-on. How does it make it easy to bring this and manage this evidence information into one central location as part of the process, not as a separate process? And this automation is really, collecting and collating evidence around all the different details and metrics about each collection, such as before and after snapshots that I mentioned earlier, screenshots, and how many things that are still might be outstanding from that perspective. And it's not a rigid evidence gathering component either. It's something that's flexible to adapt to the organizational's evidence requirements or the audit evidence requirements, where they can have additional evidence uploaded, manually added to the review, such as additional screenshots, associated mitigation controls that are in place, application security reviews, et cetera.
That's great, actually, because we did get a couple of questions about sort of the customization and whether or not there were options to, depending on what your compliance needs are. So customization is certainly available.
Yes, absolutely.
Love that. Now, here's an interesting question. Jeffrey asked a very simple question, but I think there's more complexity to it. And his question is, can we set it and forget it? Can we set it and leave it? But I'm wondering if you can also address that. But then also, I guess to that end, how easy is implementation? How easy is upkeep as compliance needs change, as the industry changes, as your organization changes? How much opportunity is there to sort of flex and roll with that, and how easy it is to make those changes?
Yeah, that's actually a very good question and very, very good point, because moving from a manual process where you're doing these via a spreadsheet, you're doing it via a bunch of distribution emails and trying to figure out how things are going, using a centralized solution to bring all this automation from a collection perspective, from a access review creation perspective, from an evidence gathering piece, you're never going to really get to the point where it's all fully automated. You don't have to touch anything or push any button. But to automate as much of those, manual, arduous tasks that are out there is part of the solution. So it's reducing that friction of folks that have other day jobs that they have from that perspective. So that is definitely part of what the solution offers.
Is that what you think? Do you think the biggest obstacle that folks are facing is sort of that internal, the change management side of it? Is there, a lack of awareness? What do you think is stopping people from introducing more of these sorts of automations and streamlining this compliance?
I think it's people unawareness of the fact that automation from a compliance perspective exists in the marketplace. Having been part of this for, well over a decade, it's pretty interesting that organizations are still using spreadsheets and emails and manual tasks to perform these audits. When there are these solutions out there that can automate this, collection of information, helping correlate the assignments, if you will, based on the corporate directory or the enterprise's directory, based on, how do we make it simple to perform the reviews in an adequate and timely fashion. It is surprising for that perspective. I don't think there's a pushback on the automation. I think it's partially unawareness. I know there are challenges with organizations of, doing API integrations into some of these systems. And that's an internal process that once they get this trust and understanding that, okay, this is all you're doing, you're reading this in, you're not pushing things in from that aspect, it becomes more adopted in the organizations.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that awareness is kind of the starting point. So if somebody here on the webinar today is maybe needing to make this argument to somebody in their organization, I think we do have a lot of decision makers out there with us today. But if somebody is sitting there thinking, I really want to make this pitch to my decision maker, is there an ROI or kind of a key takeaway that you would say, like, here's your argument. This is what you want to take forward to your team?
Yeah, I think one of the key takeaways from that perspective is time to value. Right. So I think time to value is things that organizations look at, how much time, effort, response is put into some of these manual access reviews, evidence gathering aspects. How can I reduce that duration process? How can I automate that? How can I reduce the FTE that are working on that and provide time to value to gather this information and provide it to my auditors in a quick, accurate time frame is the business case that a lot of organizations are using to help bring this into the organization.
And is there something sort of a key unique, to use the marketing speak, that you would give for Zilla Security that you think really makes you stand out?
I think what makes us stand out is the ability to collect from almost any application, right? We have multiple different types of collection endpoints, whether it's a direct API connection into an application from a cloud perspective, whether it's a CSV upload from various things that are either on premise or don't have a API. to things such as what we have as Zilla Universal Sync, which allows us to connect to basically any web application through a robotic process and bring in the accounts and permissions from that environment, right? So I think our connectivity capabilities are paramount in the industry, and I think our simplicity of the business users working on the review and setting up the reviews to have a complete and accurate review process is also a key component piece. And we've built.
Yep.
Sorry,
Oh, sorry.
And we've built our evidence collection capabilities and processes directly into the product. So it's part of each and every access review piece. So you don't have to go collect a lot of that information. It's done automatically on your behalf.
Well, and so that actually ties in really nicely to a question that just came in as well, and wondering about the size of organization. And I think a lot of what I'm hearing from you is the simplicity and the ease. And for somebody that might be thinking, oh, this maybe only applies to larger organizations. If you have to deal with compliance, I mean, smaller organizations also have to be compliant. So, potentially having this ease and simplicity would save a smaller team from needing to bring on additional hires, I would assume. So would you see that there's, is there a size of organization that you wouldn't see this working for, or it's across the board useful?
I think it's across the board useful. I mean, I think where a lot of organizations run into an inflection point are, when they're 1,000, 2,000 users and they're trying to manage that kind of a size of an organization from a compliance or an access review. Yes, we have organizations that are smaller, but we also have organizations that are tens of thousands of users, right? The larger organizations and the enterprises alike. So it's not really size, I'll say, dependent, if you will, to say it's only good for this size of an organization. It's becoming more and more of a requirement for all organizations, not only from a SOX perspective, but even SOC 2 or IT compliance. And I just heard there was something in the federal arena that's now requiring access reviews very similar to SOX. So it's just expanding across all organizations.
Yeah, I think, the threats are not limited to a size or an industry. So neither are the compliance and the protection needs as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. And the conversation keeps evolving. Just when we think we understand the parameters, it all changes, right?
Well, in all honesty, identity is the new, security threat vector of an organization. It's no longer your perimeter firewall. So it's making sure you understand who's who in the organization, who has access to what, and is that access appropriate?
Well, I think that's kind of, as much as I would love to keep going with this, I think that's kind of a good place to leave it. I think that's a great takeaway for the audience. I do want to ask if you have any sort of final thoughts or wrap-ups, if there was sort of one thing that you want everyone in this audience to either run out and do immediately or be thinking about as they walk away from this conversation. Aaron, what is that sort of one nugget of information you'd like everyone to have?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of advances in automation and simplicity, helping provide a seamless access reviewer experience with, acceptable audit evidence. And if you're new to these types of processes or solutions or tools, reach out. There's folks that have done this before. There's a lot of conversations that can be, had in terms of education, in terms of bringing you into, what other organizations are doing. We're happy to chat with you. I'm sure Hubert's happy to chat as well. But yeah, look, don't try and do the journey on your own. Reach out to somebody who's done the journey before. Reach out to somebody who's got a lot of, background expertise and can share that with you, so you can be successful in making sure you're achieving your business requirements, results in the quick time to value.
Boy, that is a great takeaway right there. Don't try to do this on your own. I think is a huge aspect of why we even exist as a company here, and having these sorts of webinar opportunities is to bring people together to get to have these conversations, because you are not alone, even though it can often feel that way. So I think that's a great takeaway. And on that note, if somebody out there is really excited about Zilla Security, which I know all of you are, just raving fans out there already, and you're ready to jump in and learn a little bit more, we've actually got a pretty cool link for you in the handouts tab. Aaron, can you give them a little bit more info on the sign up for a weekly demo link that's in the handouts tab?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Yes. So what we've done at Zilla is we put together a weekly learning session that's really casual from that perspective, around the product and product demonstrations and seeing how the product addresses business use cases, right? So it's really a business focused demo of use cases that we're solving and how we're solving those. It's not a sales pitch. It's not a commitment type of a thing. It's a sign up and learning. So it goes back to the final thought I think I mentioned earlier is, education wise, we want to also educate the market. We want to educate folks. We want to make them, really aware of those identity threats out there and how we're actually helping address those. So as just mentioned, we have that handout link there. Just go up to our website and, navigate to the Zilla Security homepage, and you should be able to sign up for these weekly product demonstrations, which are, being greatly received by existing organizations and folks alike.
Yeah, I love this idea, the sort of community of learning style demo that you bring people together and focus more on those use cases and rather than just kind of getting into the sales side of it, because I think, then there's an opportunity to learn and explore and ideally find a place, as we were just talking about, Aaron, right? It's awareness. So ideally finding, some of those solutions to that awareness side of things first, and then jumping in with the right solution for you, which I think Zilla Security has made a very clear picture for us today of why this is a great fit for our organization. So I really want to thank you for coming and helping us walk through that conversation. Thank you to Hubert as well. That was really interesting and always nice to hear from someone who's actually put things into action as well. So Aaron, thank you very much for a really fascinating conversation today. This has been a ton of fun.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jess.
All right, and to all of you out there, before you leave, keep in mind, we've got a prize giveaway, so don't go away just yet. But before we get into that prize, I just want to remind you one more time, as we were just talking about. So if you click over to the handouts tab on your audience console, not only is there that opportunity to sign up for the weekly demo that we were just chatting about with Aaron, you can also get this wonderful PDF that I have to recommend that you all explore. Spend a little time with ensuring accuracy and completeness in user access reviews. Obviously, this is what we've been getting into today, and this is just kind of scratching the surface. There's so much more to learn. So if you want to start with this resource, this takeaway, do a little bit of reading, kind of refresh your memory, run through it again, and then you can sign up for that demo as the perfect follow-up. I can tell you there actually is a demo tomorrow on Valentine's Day, February 14th. There's also one on the 21st and one on the 28th. So if you want to spend Valentine's Day with Zilla Security talking about compliance, that's a type of Valentine, right? You can hold hands and run into the sunset of compliance. So go ahead and sign up for that weekly demo right now. Make sure you've got that. Okay. Prize giveaway. I said I would do it, so now it's time. Are you ready? $250 Amazon gift card going to someone who is here live and present at the webinar and meets all those terms and conditions in the handouts tab. And that someone is Chris Bassler from Oklahoma. Chris Bassler from Oklahoma. Congratulations to you, Chris. As always, we will be in touch about claiming your prize after we wrap. Also, don't forget about that best question gift card from each one of the conversations that we had today. You are entered to win that best question gift card. So if you asked a question, even if we did not get to it live, you are still entered to win. And thank you to everyone who asked some awesome questions today. I know that we didn't get to all of them, so we are going to make sure that those get sent over to Zilla Security, so you will get responses back on your questions asked. All right, well, with that, my friends, we have reached the end of our webinar today. I know it is always sad when we have to wrap up these conversations, and it's been a fabulous one today. On behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank Zilla Security for making this webinar possible, especially to our incredible speakers here with us today. Aaron and Hubert, you've given us so much to think about. It's been such a fascinating conversation, and I know that compliance is something that maybe, it makes us feel a little antsy. We get a little nervous about it because there's already this sense. It's like when you see a cop car behind you on the highway, right? And the lights go on and you weren't speeding, but you have that little moment of panic, right? And the word compliance, I think, can sometimes trigger that sense of unease. We're always a little concerned that maybe we haven't met those compliance needs. And I think what we're talking about today and what we got some insight into is you don't need to live in that sense of unease. It doesn't have to be as heavy a lift, as onerous a task as it has maybe felt for your organization for a long time, for your team for a long time. There are ways that you can start to automate and make this process simpler and make this process feel more comfortable for every member of your team. And you get to have that sense of relief when those sirens go off in the background. You know that that's not coming for you because you've got that accurate compliance audit. So if you are having that concern at all, please do make sure you've clicked on that demo, make sure you've got that handout, and spend a little more time exploring Zilla Security. But I really appreciate all of you coming today, asking some great questions, and jumping in on this conversation with us today. It has been so much fun. I've learned a ton, and I hope that we'll get to see you all again soon. Until we do, have an absolutely beautiful end to your day.